As a teacher of over 40 years experience, both in the UK and overseas, and now specialising a great deal of my time in GCSE English, what I'm going to discuss today has never been discussed before. So don't be afraid to put comments, to follow me, to look at the links at the end of this video and get in touch or contact me with what I'm about to talk about. One of the most important things that we don't show in our ways, in the way we speak and whatever, is that students doing GCSE English have to have an incredible general knowledge. General knowledge is the key to doing well in GCSE English. Now, let me ask you a question. Ask yourself a question as a student or as a parent. Are you a learning person that behaves like a brick or a sponge? Think about it. A brick is resistant. It's hard. It does not absorb. If you want to be a great student, a GCSE English student, or an adult learning English or learning our culture in the UK, you have to be a sponge. You have to absorb every opportunity in order to build general knowledge. So general knowledge in English is there everywhere. You think about English language and English literature. You think about the depth of knowledge students have to have. Year 9 to 11 students now embarking on this journey to exam success. They get exam success if they have general knowledge, and general knowledge has to be there. You think about all the eras and ages of learning they have to kind of empathize with in English language and literature. Let's just put it English language at the moment. English language is one of the hardest papers in all the boards because students have to be able to manage an extract they've never seen before. So they have to pick up and understand by reading well very, very quickly. But also each of those extracts can be from different eras. And I was looking back, so I've started to build now a fantastic resource, which is basically a general knowledge resource. And I'm going to show it to you in a second. And it builds knowledge about several eras. So let me just share. So when we look at the actual source here, it says British life and culture through the ages. Now, why have I done this? It's because all of the extracts relate to different times. So this resource that I am developing, it's not quite ready yet, but it's getting to its situation. It will cover questions, general knowledge questions, and a quiz. It starts off with the Victorian era. It then goes into the Edwardian era. It then does World War I. It does interwar period. It's World War II. It's post-war Britain, the swinging 60s. It talks about the 1970s, the 1980s, 1990s, the 2000, the 2010 and 2020s. Because the extracts are related to these periods. And of course, as young students in year 9, you've got 14-year-olds. By the time you're 16 years old, you've only had 16 years experience. And 16 years experience, if you take it away from 2025, starts you off in the 2000s. But that's as far as your knowledge extends into general knowledge about what's going on in the world. So when we go through this is how it works. So I've developed a quiz that is going to really help students develop their understanding and their empathy. Because the thing is, students need to understand and get into feeling what an extract is about. It's not just about reading an extract. It's about understanding an extract. It's being able to empathize with it and finding out why the writer's done it. So when we look at the Victorian era in this resource book, which is going to be available in the next few days in my shop, and that you'll have links to my shop and you can purchase this. So it tells you about life in the Victorian era was shaped by the influence, the Industrial Revolution. Factories and cities grew rapidly while children often worked long hours in harsh conditions. The gap between the rich and the poor was stark. Education, literacy and rail travel expanded dramatically. So it's an overview about the era. And if we learn more about this, you'll then see the quiz. So when we look at the quiz, there's 10 questions. Now, the 10 questions are asked and you can try answering them. Now, at the very end of the source, you would get to see how and what the answers are. So let's just come out of that for a minute and come back to here. So what you need to do as a student now, not tomorrow and not the next day, you need to start building your general knowledge. The students I've had this year, I had 100% pass rate, my students. They built their general knowledge in their tuition. The general knowledge helped them empathize more. You have to ask yourself 3 questions when you read an extract, and it's important you learn this and learn it today. It's not hard, but it's something that will take you to a level very quickly. You ask 3 open questions to yourself when you've read an extract. What is the first question? What was the extract about? Okay, so you can give a summary in your mind. What was that about? The next important question is, how has the writer presented that extract? What have they given you as a reader? What have you learned from it? What are you building from it? What are you understanding about the story, the era, and everything else? And finally, why? People do things for a reason, and the question why is never asked. If you're a student that asks the what and how, you might get a 5 or a 6 in your exams. If you start asking why the writer has done this, you might be going into the top level and starting to believe in how we understand an extract. It's about getting and building empathy with the characters that come up in extracts. For instance, there's a paper in the past. It was about a teacher, and the teacher was called Mr. Fisher. And it starts off at the beginning about how his personal life is. And it talks about he's on his own, he's isolated, he lives in a terraced house, he has no car, and he stays late after school and works doing his marking. It gives information that he's been teaching for 40 years, like me plus, and he's probably in his last year of teaching. Now, what you're supposed to do in this is to suddenly understand, how would you feel? What do you think about his life? How do you feel? What do you empathize with him when he says he's alone, he's on his own, he goes home at the weekend and there's nobody else there? There's no mention of a Mrs. Fisher. You've got to learn to empathize and pick out the evidence that makes those suggestions possible. And then you look at a second paragraph where he talks about his professional life, and we find out more detail about him having a tough time with a class that he's got. Now, this is somebody who's been teaching for 40 years. In other words, he's kind of had an extensive time. And now we're beginning to think, well, what's going wrong? And we see a lot of things building in the extract. When we look at these extracts, we've got to keep questioning the reasons why, what's the purpose, what are we getting from it? And at the end of it, you have to ask yourself the question, what did I learn about society in this particular extract? And that's what English is all about. So if you are a person that wants to do well in English, you know, when I was at school, I did a subject called General Studies. It was basically about exactly what I'm saying. It's about we used to study general knowledge around the world, all the different histories, the events, the moments in time that were pivotal. And we don't seem to do that today. And yet we need to be able to do it in order to have an opinion about so many things. You think about the language papers and you think about literature. Literature goes back even further. You know, the furthest that we go back is when we look at Shakespeare. Shakespeare, over 500 years ago. You know, we're talking about an era that is so far removed from our reality. what were the conditions like? What was the living? What was the longevity of how long did you live? You know, all these questions come to play. But it's being able to empathize and understand the culture, what we're reading, what's happening, what it was like in those times. It reflects all the things to do with society. English is all about people and society. It's not about anything else other than involvement of people. How do we react? And now when we think about 2025, we see the emergence of things like artificial intelligence that are becoming more and more relevant in our life. So if you are interested in tuition, please get in touch. If you want to make comments, please get in touch, and look out for my new resource that is going to be in my shop soon. And thank you for listening to me today. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.